For some of us, when we're angry, there's so much energy inside of us. We start to move really fast, it becomes really hard to think, and all that adrenaline starts to pump. And all the easy stuff that you could normally do starts to become really hard.
God, yeah.
If you want to learn how to tune into your anger, you're going to find this video useful, so continue watching. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, for some people, when they're feeling angry, they don't want to rock the boat and get upset with people around them. Eventually, this starts to feel really exhausting, you start to feel really bitter, and then you start to experience some depressive symptoms. To better understand what's going on in our brain when we're feeling angry, we need to turn to Dr. Dan Siegel. He's a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. He came up with something called the hand model of the brain. From what he's saying, if we can see and understand what's happening in our brain when we're angry, it's much easier for us to remember and actually work towards changing some of our behaviors. Limbic system, cortex, prefrontal cortex. Wait, you don't need to know all of this stuff. This is just jargon. What you do need to remember is that when you're feeling really angry, you don't have full access to the higher functioning part of your brain. You're really in an emotional state where the fight, flight, freeze response has been activated. And the part of your brain that can manage and control all of this is not really available to you at that time. Okay, so if this is the case, what do you really do when you're so upset? At that point, your goal shouldn't be able to think better. If that's what you're thinking, chances are you're gonna set yourself up for failure, because all the stuff that you learn, all the stuff that you know, it becomes really hard to remember when you're so angry. So really, the goal should be for you to bring your focus to managing your emotion and help settle the emotion. And how do you do that? You do that by trying to give yourself some comfort. Try and have a lot of strategies that really resonate with you. And I mean really resonate with you. Just because somebody tells you breathing works, it doesn't mean paying attention to your breathing is always going to work for you. You might be the type of person that needs to go out and get some of that energy out. Go out for that walk. Go out for a run. And then when that energy comes down a little bit, maybe then at that point you can pay attention to your breathing. Maybe then at that point you can listen to some music. So you need to have something that's going to be comforting for you. And when you can do this, what starts to happen is you help settle that emotion, and then you start to regain that ability to think. You start to have more access to the higher functioning part of your brain. And you might have to do this more than once or twice. You might not get this the first time around. You might have to go back and try other comforting strategies until you get to this place where you can regain your thinking. When you've regained your thinking capacity, what you want to start doing is tuning into your anger. Look at your anger like a symptom. Underneath it, there's an emotion that's fueling this anger. Try and give it some context. See if you can try and piece together where this anger might be coming from. Is it something that's related to your home? Is it something that's related to your work? Or is it maybe a one-off case where you're feeling really tired and maybe you haven't eaten your food? What's going on? Ask some of these questions. And sometimes all of this stuff is connected. As an example, maybe you're upset at work with a coworker or your manager, and maybe there's some fear that you're going to be let go if you speak up. So then a lot of times what you're doing is you're holding it together. There's this resentment that's building up at your work, and you're really feeling angry with your manager or with your colleagues or whatever, but you're not really speaking up because you're worried that you might be losing your job potentially. And especially at a time like this with COVID-19 happening. So then you have this anger within you, you come home, it spills over, you start to direct it towards your wife and maybe your kids, and there might even be some fear about your finances, and all of this stuff is tied in together. You want to really explore where some of this stuff is coming from so that you can really attend to it. You can start to put in some practical solutions. Maybe then you start to open up a conversation with your wife about what's happening. And when you're repairing, after you've gotten really angry, you want to really repair the relationship. And your partner, your kids, all of these people, these loved ones in your life, they're so important to you. They're who you are really connected to. And they offer you a sense of safety and security. The last thing you want is when you're really angry with them, you jeopardize that connection too, and that's not helping you. You want to go back and take some accountability apologize. Apologize for the way that you behaved, and then communicate what's happening for you. Communicate some of the fears that you're living with and how that's playing into your anger so that your partner understands what's going on. Because the last thing you want is for her or him to think that you're really angry with them. You might not really be angry with them. And if you are angry with your partner, then you need to communicate that in a way where the other person can really understand where it's coming from. Maybe there's been frustration building up about a certain thing that you haven't expressed to the other person. The last thing you want is resentment building up. Just because you're not rocking the boat, just because you're not getting angry or not yelling, doesn't mean your relationship at work or home is going to be really fulfilling. You don't want that. You want to communicate some of the stuff. Even if it rocks the boat a little bit, trust that you can work through this. Because when you don't work through this stuff, what happens, you start to have this resentment that builds up and there's this distance in the relationship. And then you're no longer really happy in your relationships. When we try to keep a lid on our anger, eventually it starts to build up. It shows up in one way or another. And sometimes we might have those explosive episodes. And when we have those explosive episodes, it feels like it's totally out of proportion and completely disconnected from the present situation. And this is when people start to fight about silly things like the dishes. And is it really about the dishes? Maybe. But more often than not, it's about one person not really feeling supported or cared for. After the argument, if you start making sure that you're doing the dishes, but you don't offer support and show care in the way the other person needs it, chances are it's not going to go well. So don't just do the dishes. Make sure you do both. I think sometimes people assume that therapists have their together, but that's not true. Sometimes I lose my temper too. The only difference is I have certain rules in place when I'm really angry, and I make sure to follow them. Even if I raise my voice, I make sure that I'm not name calling or belittling the other person or emotionally manipulating the other person. And then after the argument, I just make sure that I repair the relationship. This is a real priority to me because at the end of the day, the people that you really care about, the people that you value, you want to make sure that you preserve the connection with them. And what happens when you're really angry is you rupture that. You end up feeling disconnected in the moment with them. So you want to do all that you can to re-engage and reconnect with them. I think it's really good if you talk to your family about this concept of flipping your lid, because to an extent it gives context for everyone in the household, to your wife, to your husband, to your kids, so that you know you don't have to hide all of this stuff. In fact, if you have smaller arguments, it's okay. It's just when it becomes really explosive, that's what you don't want in your household as much. You would rather work through them in small pieces.
We are going to learn all about our brain. This is how it looks inside your brain. When your brain is closed up like this, it's easier for you to think in this part. And the pressure starts building up in this part of you. You start flipping your brain.
If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and also remember to subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face down here so that you'll know when I release new videos. I'm also going to put up a playlist of my self-help videos. You might find some of them really useful, so remember to check out that playlist.